It was my first time staying late at the office, and I wasn't the least bit anxious. Everyone else had left about an hour ago, and as their voices faded down the hallway, I felt a strange sense of calm settle in. The lights overhead gave off their usual cold glow, and the low hum of the building's systems filled the space like white noise. I focused on my screen, tapping through spreadsheets and adjusting figures with mechanical rhythm. Ghost stories had been passed around the office for years, tales of shadows in the break room or strange noises near the old archive cabinets, but I'd always brushed them off. I wasn't a superstitious person, and nothing had ever happened to make me think twice. In fact, I'd welcomed the silence, thinking I'd finally get ahead of schedule. What I didn't realize then was that something in this place had simply been waiting for the right moment, when the lights dimmed and the last skeptic was finally alone. Sometime after 10, I started to notice how different the office felt. The air had turned slightly cooler, not by much, but just enough to make me pull my sleeves down. The glow of my monitor illuminated the desk, and beyond it, everything seemed to recede into shadows. I heard the occasional creak from the ceiling, probably the ducts settling, but in the stillness, even the smallest sounds felt exaggerated. I stood to stretch, glancing toward the dark hallway that led to the break room. Normally, I wouldn't have hesitated, but something about the way the light stopped just short of the corridor made it feel farther away than it was. I shook off the unease and grabbed my mug, telling myself it was just late, and I was tired. As I stepped into the hallway, my footsteps echoed too sharply against the tile, and for a split second, I had the odd sensation that mine weren't the only footsteps there. But when I paused, everything went silent again. I walked into the break room, flipping on the light and setting my mug beneath the coffee machine. The fluorescent bulbs above buzzed faintly, casting a sterile glow over the empty tables and chairs. I kept glancing at the doorway, though I couldn't say why. The hallway beyond looked darker now, like the light from the break room didn't quite reach past the threshold. I waited for the coffee to drip, arms crossed, tapping my foot, but my focus kept drifting back toward the corridor. There was a strange pressure in my chest, subtle but growing, like the room itself had tightened around me. I told myself I was overthinking it, that long hours in caffeine were messing with my senses. But then I heard something from the hallway, soft but unmistakable, like fabric brushing against a wall or the gentle rustle of movement. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. And yet when I looked again, there was nothing, just empty space and shadows that seemed to press closer. As I stepped back into the hallway with my coffee, I was struck by an immediate sense that something had shifted. The quiet no longer felt peaceful. It felt staged, like a silence meant to distract me from something lurking beneath it. I moved slowly, eyes adjusting to the dimmer lights. Overhead, one of the bulbs flickered briefly, casting a sudden shadow that stretched across the far wall before snapping back to normal. As I passed the glass wall of the conference room, I caught a glimpse of something behind me in the reflection. I stopped cold. A figure stood a few paces back, pale and still, almost blending into the wall. My breath caught, and I spun around, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. But the hallway was empty. No footsteps, no sound, nothing. I turned back to the glass to check again, but the reflection showed only me. The figure, whatever it had been, was gone as if it had never existed at all. I stood frozen in front of the glass, trying to convince myself it had been a trick of the light, a product of too much caffeine and not enough sleep, but the chill in my chest wouldn't leave. I walked back to my desk, sat down, and placed my coffee beside the keyboard, pretending to settle in, though I couldn't concentrate. The lights along the hallway began to dim and brighten in irregular intervals, as if something were moving through the space, but nothing was visible. Then my monitor faded. Not entirely off, but the display blinked to a blank black screen. I leaned closer, confused, checking the cables below the desk. That's when I noticed a reflection in the darkened screen. There was a pale face behind me, close enough to be watching over my shoulder. I whipped around, expecting to find someone there, but my chair spun slightly and revealed only emptiness. I sat completely still, the silence around me louder than any sound. I don't know how long I sat there, frozen, afraid to even shift in my chair. The hum of the lights had returned to normal, but everything felt wrong. I finally stood up and moved slowly through the office, trying to shake the feeling that I was being watched. I walked to the reception area at the front, hoping movement would clear my head. That's when I noticed it. One of the swivel chairs in the waiting nook was turned, ever so slightly, facing the hallway I had just come from. I hadn't touched it. No one had. My skin prickled. I looked toward the large windows near the front, but the reflection in the glass was faint with the indoor light. Still, I caught a glimpse of something behind me, a faint white blur drifting across the far end of the hallway. It wasn't walking, it wasn't even solid, just a shimmer of movement, slow and distant. I stepped back, heart racing, knowing with certainty now that I wasn't alone in this building. I moved away from the reception area, unable to bring myself to look back toward that hallway. My legs felt heavier with each step, like the air itself was resisting me. I returned to my desk only long enough to grab my bag. I wasn't thinking about finishing my work anymore, I just needed to leave. But as I turned toward the hallway that led to the main door, every light overhead went out at once. The entire office dropped into a suffocating darkness, broken only by the soft glow of my monitors still active behind me. I stood there, paralyzed, my ears straining for any sound. At first, there was only silence. Then, slowly, I heard the unmistakable creak of a door hinge. Not a loud slam or a heavy push, just the delicate sound of a door being eased open somewhere down the dark corridor. My throat tightened. I hadn't opened any doors. And in the complete stillness that followed, I heard the soft, dragging scrape of something moving across the carpet. I backed up instinctively, trying to control my breathing, but my chest felt like it was caving in. The darkness swallowed the hallway ahead, and I couldn't see more than a few feet in any direction. I gripped my bag tighter and took one step forward, then another, forcing myself toward the main exit. That's when I heard it, breathing, not my own. It came from just beyond the turn in the hallway, low and wet, like someone struggling to inhale through water. I stopped moving. The sound didn't. It grew louder, closer, dragging itself forward with a rhythm that felt unnatural. I turned and moved in the opposite direction, nearly tripping over a chair as I tried to find a different way out. I couldn't explain it, but I knew. Whatever was following me wasn't human. There was no logic left to cling to. I rushed through the corridor past the break room, blindly reaching for the emergency exit at the back, only to find it sealed shut as if it had never opened at all. Panic took hold of me in full. I rattled the handle again uselessly and turned back toward the hallway, where the darkness seemed deeper now, thicker, like it had shape and weight. My footsteps echoed differently, too slowly, as if the air were swallowing the sound. Then I saw her. Just ahead, where the two corridors met, she stood barefoot in the center of the hallway. Her long black hair clung to her face and neck like it was soaked, her head tilted slightly downward. I couldn't see her eyes, but I felt them, burning into me. Her skin was pale in a way that didn't seem natural, like a layer of dust clinging to something once human. I froze, heart in my throat, unable to scream or even breathe. She didn't move. She didn't need to. The presence alone was enough to break something in me. I turned and ran, not caring where I was going anymore, not thinking about my pride or logic or fear of being laughed at. I just needed to get away. I sprinted through the maze of dim corridors, barely seeing where I was going, until I crashed into the side door near the stairwell. By some miracle, it gave way under my weight and I stumbled into the cold night air. Rain was still falling, but I hardly noticed. I didn't stop running until I reached my car. My hands were shaking so badly I fumbled the keys twice before managing to get the door open. I sat there, drenched in sweat and rain, staring at the entrance of the building, waiting to see if she would follow. But nothing came. No face in the glass, no shadow at the door, only the building still and silent again, like it had been before. I didn't go back to grab my things. I didn't care. I drove home in silence, barely blinking, and I didn't tell anyone what really happened. I had always thought ghosts were for stories, campfire tales to scare kids. But I know now what I saw, and whatever she was, she wanted me to see her.